Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you never imagined they could destroy your entire life? Rebecca Hayes did. She believed she had built a loving family, a safe home, and a future filled with happiness. Then, on what seemed like an ordinary morning, everything changed. A mysterious envelope appeared at her front door. Inside was an old photograph. A photograph that should never have existed. The moment Rebecca saw it, she realized someone had been hiding the truth for years. The man she trusted most. The family she thought she knew. The life she believed was real. Everything was built on secrets. What Rebecca uncovered next would lead her into a mystery filled with betrayal, buried lies, and dangerous truths that refused to stay hidden. This is the unbelievable story of Rebecca Hayes. Rebecca Hayes always believed she was one of the lucky ones. From the outside, her life looked almost perfect. She lived in a quiet American suburb, a peaceful neighborhood. Children rode their bikes until sunset. Neighbors greeted each other with warm smiles. Weekends were filled with family barbecues, birthday parties, and laughter. Every morning began the same way. Rebecca woke up before everyone else. She made herself a fresh cup of coffee. Then she stood beside the kitchen window, watching the sunrise slowly brighten the sky. Those quiet moments meant everything to her. They reminded her why she worked so hard. She wasn't rich. She wasn't famous. But she believed she already had everything that truly mattered. A husband she trusted, a home she loved, and a family worth protecting. For 15 years, Rebecca and her husband, Daniel, had built what everyone believed was the perfect marriage. Friends often smiled and said, "You two are the perfect couple." Whenever someone needed relationship advice, Rebecca was the first person they called. She always gave the same answer. Marriage isn't about perfection. It's about choosing each other every single day. She truly believed those words. Daniel seemed like the perfect husband. He never forgot their anniversary. He fixed things around the house without being asked. He laughed at Rebecca's terrible jokes. And every Friday evening, no matter how busy work became, he always brought home Rebecca's favorite chocolate cake. From the same little neighborhood bakery. It was a simple tradition, but it always made Rebecca smile. Their daughter, Emily, was 16 years old. She was smart, kind, and full of dreams. Rebecca often looked at Emily and wondered where all those years had gone. It felt like only yesterday she had been teaching her little girl how to ride a bicycle. Now Emily was thinking about college, her future, and the life waiting ahead of her. Rebecca couldn't have been prouder. Life wasn't perfect. There were bills to pay. The roof leaked whenever it rained too hard. And the family still argued about whose turn it was to wash the dishes. But those little problems never bothered Rebecca. They made life feel real. They made home feel warm. Rebecca believed happiness wasn't about having a perfect life. It was about appreciating ordinary moments. And she appreciated every single one. At least, she thought she did. There was one piece of advice her mother had given her many years ago. If everything feels too perfect, pay closer attention. Rebecca always laughed when she remembered those words. She thought her mother simply worried too much. But sometimes, old warnings returned for a reason. A few weeks before everything changed, Rebecca noticed something strange. At first, it seemed too small to matter. Daniel had started taking his phone everywhere. To the kitchen. To the garage. Even into the bathroom. It wasn't dramatic. Just different. One evening, Rebecca smiled and asked, "Who keeps texting you so much?" Daniel answered immediately. "Work." The answer sounded completely reasonable. He had recently taken on more responsibility at the company. Long hours. Late meetings. Weekend phone calls. Everything made sense. Rebecca never questioned him. Because trust isn't built in a single day. And she believed it couldn't be destroyed by a single text message. Days turned into weeks. The little changes became harder to ignore. Daniel started coming home later than usual. His explanations always sounded believable. Traffic, late meetings, unexpected clients. Every excuse sounded normal. But together, they began to form a pattern. Rebecca noticed it, then quickly convinced herself she was imagining things. She refused to become the kind of wife who searched through her husband's phone or followed him around town. That wasn't who she was. Trust meant believing the person you loved, even when fear whispered something else. So, Rebecca chose trust. Again. And again. Until one ordinary Tuesday afternoon, something happened that neither Rebecca nor anyone in her family could have imagined. A single moment. A single white envelope. And one name written across the front. That was all it took. Everything Rebecca believed about her life was about to fall apart. Tuesday afternoons were usually quiet. Rebecca had just finished cleaning the kitchen. Emily was still at school. Daniel was at work. The house felt peaceful. Rebecca poured herself another cup of coffee. She was about to sit down when the doorbell rang. She wasn't expecting anyone. Curious, she walked to the front door. No one was there. She looked to the left, then to the right. The street was completely quiet. Just as she was about to close the door, she noticed something on the welcome mat. A plain white envelope. No stamp. No return address. Only 2 words, written neatly across the front: Rebecca Hayes. A strange feeling settled in her chest. She picked up the envelope. It felt surprisingly light. For a moment, she considered throwing it away. But curiosity won. She carried it into the kitchen, then slowly opened it. Inside, there was only one photograph. Rebecca frowned. It showed Daniel, her husband, standing beside a woman she had never seen before. The picture looked old. Maybe 10, or even 15 years old. Daniel was smiling. The woman was smiling too. They looked comfortable together. Rebecca turned the photograph over. There was a single handwritten sentence. Ask him about Laura. Laura. The name meant nothing to Rebecca. She searched her memory. No friend. No coworker. No relative. She had never heard Daniel mention anyone named Laura. Rebecca stared at the picture again. Maybe there was a simple explanation. Maybe Laura was an old colleague. Or an old friend. She wanted to believe that. She really did. But something about the photograph and the anonymous envelope made her heart beat a little faster. Then she noticed something else. Hidden inside the envelope, there was a small black USB flash drive. Rebecca slowly picked it up. She had no idea that pressing play would change everything. Rebecca carried the USB drive into the living room. She sat down in front of her laptop. For several seconds, she couldn't move. Her heart was beating faster than ever. Maybe she should call Daniel. Maybe she should throw the USB away. Maybe none of this was real. But deep inside, she knew she had to see what was inside. She plugged the USB into her laptop. Only one file appeared on the screen. A video. No title. No date. No explanation. Rebecca took a slow, deep breath. Then, she pressed play. The video looked like security camera footage. The picture was slightly blurry, but one person was impossible to mistake. It was Daniel. He was standing outside a small cafe. A few moments later, the woman from the photograph walked toward him. Laura. They spoke for several minutes. There was no sound. Only silent images. Then, Daniel reached into his coat pocket. He handed Laura a small envelope. Laura looked down at it. When she looked back up, there were tears in her eyes. She gave Daniel a gentle hug. Then they walked away in different directions. The video ended. Rebecca couldn't breathe. She played it again. And then, one more time. Every replay raised the same questions. Who was Laura? Why had Daniel kept her a secret? And why was someone showing Rebecca this now? Suddenly, she heard the sound of a car outside. Daniel was home. Rebecca quickly removed the USB drive. She placed the photograph back inside the white envelope. Then she hid everything inside a kitchen drawer. A second later, the front door opened. Daniel walked inside with his usual warm smile. "Hi, honey. How was your day?" Rebecca looked into his eyes. For the first time in 15 years, she didn't know what to believe. She forced a small smile. "It was fine." Daniel smiled back, completely unaware that one anonymous envelope had already changed their lives forever. That night, Rebecca couldn't sleep. Daniel was lying beside her, fast asleep, as if nothing had happened. But Rebecca's mind refused to rest. She kept thinking about the photograph, the video, and one name: Laura. The next morning, everything looked normal. Daniel got ready for work. Emily rushed downstairs. She grabbed a piece of toast, kissed her mother on the cheek, and hurried out the door. A few minutes later, Daniel smiled at Rebecca. "I'll be home for dinner." Rebecca forced a smile. "Drive safely." The front door closed. The house became quiet again. Rebecca waited. She looked through the window. Daniel's car disappeared down the street. Only then, she walked to the kitchen. She opened the drawer. The white envelope was still there. So was the photograph. And the USB drive. Rebecca picked up the photograph once more. This time, she looked more carefully. Something caught her attention. In the background, behind Daniel and Laura, there was a small cafe sign. The name was difficult to read, but after zooming in on the picture, she could make out a few letters. Maple Cafe. It wasn't much, but it was the first real clue. Rebecca opened her laptop. She searched for Maple Cafe. Several results appeared. Most were in other states. Then one location caught her eye. It was less than 30 minutes away. Rebecca stared at the screen. Her heart began to race. For the first time, she had somewhere to start looking. She picked up her car keys, locked the front door, and drove toward the cafe. She had no idea that someone was already watching her. Rebecca arrived at Maple Cafe just before noon. She parked across the street. For a moment, she stayed inside her car, looking at the entrance, trying to calm her racing heart. Finally, she stepped outside. The cafe looked quiet. A few customers were enjoying their coffee. Everything seemed completely ordinary. Rebecca walked in. She looked around carefully. No sign of Laura. No sign of Daniel. She took a seat near the window. A waitress walked over with a smile. "Good afternoon. What can I get for you?" Rebecca ordered a cup of coffee. Then she asked as casually as she could, "Can I ask you something?" The waitress nodded. "Of course." Rebecca placed the old photograph on the table. "Have you ever seen this woman before?" The waitress studied the picture for a few seconds. Then she slowly nodded. "I think I have." Rebecca's heart skipped a beat. "You have?" "Yes. She used to come here once in a while. Usually with a man." Rebecca felt her hands grow cold. "Do you remember his name?" The waitress shook her head. "No. But I remember hearing her call him Daniel." Rebecca looked down at the photograph. Her worst fear was beginning to feel real. Before she could ask another question, the waitress added, "I haven't seen either of them in years." Rebecca thanked her quietly. She finished her coffee, then walked back toward her car. As she reached the parking lot, she noticed something unusual. A folded piece of paper, tucked under her windshield wiper. She looked around. The parking lot was almost empty. No one seemed to be watching. Slowly, she unfolded the note. Only one sentence was written on it. "You're asking the wrong people." Rebecca's heart pounded. She quickly turned around, but whoever had left the message was already gone. Rebecca held the note tightly. "You're asking the wrong people." She looked around the parking lot one more time. There was no one. Only a few parked cars. And the sound of traffic in the distance. Someone had been watching her. That much was clear. But who? And why? Rebecca got into her car. Instead of driving home, she looked at the photograph again. Then she remembered something. The waitress had said Laura and Daniel hadn't been there for years. That meant someone else had sent the note. Someone who knew Rebecca was asking questions. The thought sent a chill through her body. As she started the engine, her phone rang. It was Daniel. "Hi, honey. Everything okay?" Rebecca took a slow breath. "Yes. I'm just running a few errands." Daniel sounded relaxed. "Don't forget. I'll be home early tonight." Rebecca smiled politely. "I'll see you then." She ended the call. But one question wouldn't leave her mind. If Daniel was telling the truth, then who was trying so hard to make her doubt him? On the drive home, Rebecca made a decision. She wasn't going to confront Daniel. Not yet. She needed facts. Not guesses. Not rumors. Only the truth. And somewhere, she believed that truth was waiting for her. The next morning, Rebecca started where she knew answers might exist. Daniel's office. She parked across the street. The building looked exactly as she remembered. Modern. Busy. Completely ordinary. She walked through the front entrance. The receptionist greeted her with a warm smile. "Good morning. How can I help you?" Rebecca smiled politely. "I'm here to surprise my husband." The receptionist checked the schedule. "I'm sorry. Daniel is in a meeting right now. It may take a while." Rebecca nodded. "No problem." As she turned to leave, she noticed a wall filled with old company photographs. Annual events. Team celebrations. Charity fundraisers. One picture caught her attention. It had been taken nearly 15 years earlier. Rebecca stepped closer. There was Daniel, standing with several coworkers. And beside him was the same woman from the photograph. Laura. Rebecca's heart began to race. So Laura wasn't a stranger. She had worked with Daniel. Just then, a voice came from behind her. "You're looking at some old memories." Rebecca turned around. A middle-aged man smiled politely. "I used to work with Daniel. My name is Michael." Rebecca introduced herself. Michael looked surprised. "So you're Daniel's wife?" Rebecca nodded. Then she asked the question she had been carrying for days. "Do you remember Laura?" Michael's smile slowly disappeared. He looked at the old photograph, then back at Rebecca. After a long pause, he quietly said, "I remember her. And I remember the rumors." Rebecca felt her pulse quicken. "What rumors?" Michael looked around to make sure no one was listening. Then he spoke in a low voice. "Most people believed Daniel and Laura were having an affair." Rebecca's heart sank. Before she could say another word, Michael added quietly, "But I never believed those rumors." And for the first time, Rebecca realized there might be another side to the story. Rebecca looked at Michael. "What do you mean?" Michael took a slow breath. "I worked with Daniel for years. I knew the kind of man he was. He wasn't perfect. But he was honest." Rebecca remained silent. Michael continued. "People love to gossip. They see two coworkers talking. They create a story. And before long, everyone believes it." Rebecca looked at the old photograph again. "Then why were Daniel and Laura always together?" Michael nodded slowly. "That's a fair question. I asked Daniel the same thing once." Rebecca leaned forward. "What did he say?" Michael hesitated. "He told me Laura was going through a very difficult time. But he never explained what had happened. He said it wasn't his secret to tell." Rebecca felt a mix of relief and confusion. "So there really was a secret?" Michael nodded. "Yes. But not the one people believed." Rebecca stared at him. "Do you know where Laura is now?" Michael thought for a moment. "I haven't seen her in years. But I remember hearing that she moved to a small town outside the city." He reached into a desk drawer. After searching for a few seconds, he found an old address book. The pages had turned yellow with age. Michael slowly flipped through them. Then he stopped. "I think this is it." He wrote an address on a small piece of paper, then handed it to Rebecca. "I don't know if she still lives there, but it's the last address I have." Rebecca looked at the paper. This was the first real lead she had found. She thanked Michael, folded the paper carefully, and walked back toward her car. As she started the engine, she looked at the address one more time. If Laura was still living there, Rebecca might finally discover the truth. Or she might uncover a secret that would change her life forever. The address was almost 2 hours away. Rebecca drove in silence. No music. No phone calls. Only her thoughts. The further she went, the heavier her chest felt. She kept asking herself the same question. What if Laura denied everything? What if she admitted it? What if the truth was worse than anything she had imagined? By the time she entered the small town, the sun was already lowering in the sky. The streets were quiet. Almost too quiet. Rebecca followed the address carefully. It led her to a simple white house. At the end of a narrow road, a few flower pots sat on the porch. A wind chime moved softly in the wind. Everything looked peaceful. But Rebecca felt nothing but tension. She stepped out of the car, walked to the front door, and knocked. No answer. She knocked again. This time, footsteps came from inside. Slow. Careful. The door opened slightly. Rebecca saw her immediately. Laura. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air felt heavy. Finally, Laura whispered, "You're Rebecca." Rebecca nodded slowly. "You know who I am?" Laura looked down. "I've known for a long time." She opened the door wider. "Please come inside." Rebecca hesitated, then she stepped in. The house was quiet. Simple. Books on the shelves. Family photos on the wall. Everything looked normal. Too normal. Laura brought 2 cups of tea. Rebecca didn't touch hers. She came for answers. Nothing else mattered. Finally, Rebecca spoke. "Were you having an affair with my husband?" The room went silent. Laura closed her eyes, then opened them again, full of sadness. "I knew you would ask that first." Rebecca's voice stayed firm. "Then answer me." Laura took a slow breath. "The answer isn't simple." Rebecca's patience broke slightly. "I don't want complicated. I want the truth." Laura nodded. "You deserve that." She stood up, walked to a cabinet, and brought back an old photo album. She placed it on the table. "Before you judge Daniel, look at this." Rebecca slowly opened the album. At first, old office pictures, company events, group photos. Then she turned another page and froze. Daniel was there. Laura was there. And between them, a little girl, smiling at the camera. Rebecca's hands trembled. She looked up. "Who is she?" Laura answered softly. "Her name is Olivia." Rebecca stared at the photo. Her mind stopped for a moment, because in that instant, she understood one thing clearly. This was no longer just a story about betrayal. It was something much deeper, and much more complicated. Rebecca stared at the photograph. The little girl, Olivia. Her mind refused to accept what she was seeing. She looked at Laura, then back at the photo. "Who is she really?" Laura sat down slowly, as if the weight of the question was too heavy. "Olivia is not what you think," she said quietly. Rebecca frowned. "Then tell me what I should think." Laura took a deep breath. "She is my niece." Rebecca blinked. "Niece?" Laura nodded. "My sister died when Olivia was very young. After that, I became her legal guardian." The room fell silent. Rebecca looked again at the photo. Daniel was standing beside Laura and the child. He looked calm, familiar, almost like part of their family. "Then why is Daniel in this picture?" Rebecca asked. Laura hesitated. This time, her voice was softer. He helped us. Rebecca narrowed her eyes. Helped you how? Laura looked down at her hands. After my sister passed away, I had nothing. No stability. No support. Only a child who needed me. She paused. I was struggling. Really struggling. Rebecca listened carefully. Laura continued. Daniel noticed. He didn't ignore it like everyone else. He started helping quietly. Rebecca's voice turned sharp. Helping in what way? Laura looked up. Money. Advice. School support for Olivia. Rebecca felt her chest tighten. And you never told me? Laura shook her head quickly. It wasn't like that. It wasn't something emotional or inappropriate. It was survival. A long silence followed. Rebecca looked at the photo again. Daniel's hand was gently resting on Olivia's shoulder. A simple gesture. But in Rebecca's eyes, it suddenly looked complicated. Too complicated. Laura spoke again. I know how it looks, but there was nothing between us. Nothing like that. Rebecca's voice dropped. Then why did you hide it? Laura hesitated. Because that question was the one she had been avoiding all along. And the answer would change everything that Rebecca thought she knew about her husband. Laura stayed silent for a moment. Then she finally spoke. Because Daniel asked me to keep it a secret. Rebecca looked up immediately. Why would he do that? Laura sighed. Because of the office. Rebecca frowned. The office? Laura nodded. People talk. People judge. If a married man starts helping a single woman, everyone creates their own story. Rebecca stayed quiet. Laura continued. Daniel was worried. Not about himself. But about you. Rebecca's expression tightened. About me? Laura nodded again. He said he didn't want rumors reaching your ears. He didn't want you to feel hurt or disrespected. Rebecca looked away. For the first time, her certainty started to shake. Laura picked up the photo again. Everything we did was public in a way that couldn't be explained, but private in intention. She paused. I never asked him to stay involved. He chose to help because he felt responsible. Rebecca whispered. Responsible for what? Laura hesitated, then answered carefully. For leaving things unfinished when my sister passed away. Rebecca stared at her. So Daniel wasn't hiding an affair. He was hiding kindness. Laura didn't answer immediately. But her silence said enough. Rebecca felt her thoughts collide. Everything she believed, everything she feared, was starting to shift. Laura continued softly. But there is something else you should know. Rebecca looked at her sharply. What else? Laura placed the photo back on the table. Daniel didn't stop helping us just because of rumors. He stopped because something else happened. Rebecca felt a cold wave rise inside her. Something else? Laura nodded slowly. Something at his workplace. Something on the same day everything changed. Rebecca's breath slowed. October 14th. Laura looked at her. Yes. And that is the part of the story Daniel has never told anyone. Rebecca sat very still. The words kept repeating in her mind. October 14th. Daniel never told anyone. She looked at Laura. Start from the beginning. Laura nodded slowly. This is where everything connects. She leaned forward. Her voice became quieter. That day, everything was normal. At least, it looked normal. Rebecca listened carefully. Laura continued. Daniel went to work like usual. He had meetings that day. He was under pressure. She paused. But something happened after hours. Rebecca felt her heartbeat increase. After hours? Laura nodded. Yes, he stayed late at the office. There was an incident. Rebecca frowned. What kind of incident? Laura hesitated, then spoke carefully. A disagreement. Between employees. Rebecca leaned forward. About what? Laura looked down. Internal company documents. Rebecca's eyes narrowed. Financial records? Laura nodded slowly. Yes. Rebecca felt a chill. Laura continued. Daniel overheard something that night. Something he was never supposed to hear. Rebecca asked quickly. What did he hear? Laura took a breath. A conversation about manipulation of records and money that didn't match the reports. Rebecca went silent. Laura's voice dropped further. And the people involved weren't small employees. They were powerful. Rebecca felt her stomach tighten. Laura continued. That same night, Daniel was asked to forget what he heard. Rebecca frowned. Asked? Laura nodded. But not politely. Rebecca's voice became sharp. Then how? Laura looked up. With pressure, fear, and a warning. Rebecca sat back slowly. For the first time, the story was no longer about betrayal. It was becoming something else entirely, something far more dangerous. Rebecca's voice came out slowly. A warning? Laura nodded. Yes. The room felt heavier, as if even the air had changed. Laura continued. Daniel was told very clearly that if he repeated what he heard, it would not end well for him. Rebecca's hands tightened slightly. Who told him that? Laura looked down. I don't know the exact names, but I know the type of people. She paused. People inside the company. People with influence. Rebecca stayed silent. Laura's voice softened. After that night, Daniel changed. Rebecca frowned. Changed how? Laura answered carefully. He became more careful. He stopped talking about work at home. He stopped trusting easily. Rebecca looked away, trying to process everything. Laura continued. And that's when the misunderstanding began. Rebecca turned back immediately. What misunderstanding? Laura sighed. The office saw Daniel and me talking. They saw him helping me with Olivia. They saw meetings, conversations, small moments. She shook her head. But they didn't see the real reason. Rebecca's voice turned sharp again. Which was? Laura looked directly at her. Protection. Rebecca froze. Laura continued. Daniel was trying to keep us safe. Me. And Olivia. And even you. Rebecca whispered. Me? Laura nodded. He believed if people thought it was just gossip, then no one would dig deeper into what he had overheard. Rebecca sat back slowly. Everything inside her was breaking into pieces. The affair story, the rumors, the suspicion, all of it started to look different now. But one question remained. The most important one. Rebecca spoke softly. Then why did he never tell me? Laura's eyes lowered. Because he thought silence was safer than truth. And because... She hesitated. Something happened on October 14th. That made him believe the danger was real. Rebecca didn't move. Her voice was barely a whisper. What happened on October 14th? Laura looked at her for a long time, as if deciding how much truth Rebecca was ready to hear. Then she spoke. That night changed everything. Rebecca leaned forward. Start from the beginning. Laura nodded slowly. Daniel stayed late at the office, long after everyone left. It was supposed to be a normal work night. She paused. But it wasn't. Rebecca felt her chest tighten. Laura continued. There was a confrontation. Rebecca frowned. Between who? Laura hesitated. Between Daniel and someone from senior management. Rebecca went still. Laura's voice dropped lower. Daniel had questions about financial inconsistencies and missing records. Rebecca whispered. So he confronted them? Laura nodded. Yes. And that's when things escalated. Rebecca asked quickly. What kind of escalation? Laura looked down. Not physical, but threatening. Rebecca felt a cold wave run through her body. Laura continued. He was told again to stop asking questions, to forget what he heard. Rebecca shook her head slightly. And he didn't? Laura answered softly. No. That was the problem. Rebecca stared at her. Laura continued. He couldn't ignore it anymore. He had already seen too much. Rebecca's voice trembled. And then? Laura took a slow breath. Then someone made a decision. That would change Daniel's life forever. Rebecca's voice shook. What decision? Laura stayed silent for a moment. Then she spoke very slowly. That night, Daniel stopped being just a witness. Rebecca frowned. What do you mean? Laura continued. After the confrontation, something went wrong inside the company. Rebecca leaned forward. Wrong how? Laura lowered her eyes. There was panic. People started covering things up. Files were moved. Records were changed. Rebecca felt her heart race. Laura continued. And Daniel realized that what he had seen was not a small mistake. It was something bigger, Rebecca whispered. How big? Laura looked at her. Big enough that people were willing to protect it at any cost. The room became completely silent. Only the sound of Rebecca's breathing remained. Laura continued softly. That night, Daniel made a choice. Rebecca asked quickly. What choice? Laura answered carefully. He chose to report what he knew. Rebecca froze. Laura continued. But before it could go anywhere, someone moved faster. Rebecca's eyes widened. Who? Laura shook her head. I don't know the exact person, but Daniel was stopped. Rebecca's voice turned sharp. Stopped how? Laura hesitated, then said the words quietly. By fear and consequences. Rebecca sat back slowly. Everything she thought she knew was collapsing again. Laura continued. After that night, Daniel never spoke about it again. But something inside him had changed. Rebecca whispered. Changed how? Laura looked at her. He started protecting everyone around him, even if it meant destroying his own peace. Rebecca closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, one question remained. Then why does someone still want him silent after all these years? Laura didn't answer immediately. Because she knew the answer to that question was still waiting somewhere in the dark. Rebecca stayed silent for a long time. The room felt heavier than before. Finally, she spoke. If Daniel tried to report it, then why is this still happening now? Laura looked at her with a tired expression. Because not everything was handled that night. Rebecca frowned. What do you mean? Laura leaned forward slightly. After October 14th, things didn't just disappear. They were managed. Rebecca's eyes narrowed. Managed by who? Laura hesitated. I don't know every detail. But powerful people don't let things fall apart easily. Rebecca felt a chill run down her spine. Laura continued. Daniel thought it was over. He thought reporting it, even if delayed, would be enough. Rebecca whispered. But it wasn't. Laura shook her head. No. Because someone realized what Daniel had seen. Rebecca's heart started beating faster. And that's when everything changed. Laura nodded. That's when the silence started. Rebecca looked confused. What silence? Laura answered slowly. Not just Daniel's silence, but everyone's. Rebecca frowned. Laura continued. People at the office stopped talking about it. Records were cleaned. Names were removed. Rebecca felt sick. Laura's voice softened. And anyone connected to that night was told to forget it. Rebecca sat back. So it was covered up. Laura nodded. Yes. Rebecca looked down at her hands, then asked quietly. And Daniel? Laura paused. Daniel became part of the silence, whether he wanted to or not. Rebecca looked up immediately. What does that mean? Laura answered carefully. It means he lived with something that he was never allowed to explain. Rebecca's voice trembled. Then why didn't he tell me? Laura looked at her sadly. Because he believed the truth would put you in danger too. Rebecca went quiet. For the first time, she realized the story was no longer just about secrets. It was about fear and survival. Rebecca sat very still. The words echoed in her mind. Fear and survival. Asterisk asterisk. She finally spoke. So Daniel chose silence to protect me? Laura nodded slowly. Yes. Rebecca looked down. Her voice was quieter now. But that still doesn't explain everything. Laura agreed. It doesn't. A long pause followed. Then Laura stood up. She walked to the window, looked outside for a moment, then turned back. There is something I haven't told you yet. Rebecca's eyes lifted immediately. What is it? Laura hesitated, then spoke carefully. After the office incident, Daniel didn't just stay silent. He started being watched. Rebecca froze. Watched? Laura nodded. Not officially, but closely. Rebecca felt a cold pressure in her chest. Laura continued. People wanted to know what he knew, and what he might still say. Rebecca whispered. So he was a threat to them? Laura answered simply. Yes. The room felt smaller, heavier. Laura sat back down. And that's when the anonymous messages started. Rebecca's eyes widened. The envelope. Laura nodded. Could be part of it. Rebecca asked quickly. So someone is still involved in this? Laura didn't answer immediately. Then she said, I think so. Rebecca felt her stomach tighten. Laura continued. But there's another possibility. Rebecca looked at her. What possibility? Laura lowered her voice. That someone close to Daniel is trying to force the truth out. Rebecca went silent. Because for the first time, the danger didn't feel far away anymore. It felt close. Very close. Rebecca's breath slowed. Her voice came out carefully. Someone close to Daniel? Laura nodded. Yes. A long silence followed. Rebecca looked down at the old photo album again. Her hands trembled slightly. Why now? She finally asked. After all these years, why is this happening now? Laura didn't answer immediately. She seemed to choose her words carefully. Because something has changed. Rebecca looked up. What changed? Laura leaned forward. I don't know everything. But I've heard whispers. Rebecca frowned. What kind of whispers? Laura lowered her voice. That the past is being reopened. Rebecca's eyes widened. Reopened by who? Laura shook her head. I don't know. But when powerful secrets stay buried too long, they don't stay buried forever. Rebecca felt a chill run through her body. She whispered, So this isn't just about Daniel anymore. Laura nodded. No, it never was. Rebecca looked at the photo again. Daniel, Laura, Olivia. Everything felt connected now, but still incomplete. Rebecca stood up slowly. I need to talk to Daniel. Laura immediately shook her head. Be careful. Rebecca frowned. Why? Laura's voice became serious, because whoever started sending you those messages already knows you're looking for the truth. Rebecca froze. Laura continued. And once you get too close, they won't stay hidden anymore. A heavy silence filled the room. Rebecca finally spoke. I'm already too close. And for the first time, Laura didn't argue. The room stayed silent. Rebecca stood still for a moment. Then she slowly closed the photo album. Her voice was calm, but firm. I can't stop now. Laura looked worried. Rebecca. Rebecca interrupted her gently. If Daniel is in danger, or if this is connected to something from his past, I need to know the truth from him. Laura hesitated, then nodded slowly. Just be careful. Rebecca picked up her bag. She took one last look around the house, then walked toward the door. Outside, the sky was turning darker. The wind felt colder now. As she reached her car, Her phone suddenly buzzed. One new message. Unknown number. Rebecca stopped walking. She opened it slowly. Only one line appeared on the screen. "You're finally asking the right questions." Rebecca's hand tightened around the phone. She looked around the empty street. No one was there. But for the first time, she felt it clearly. She was no longer searching for the truth. The truth was now watching her back. She got into the car, started the engine, and drove away from Laura's house, not knowing that everything she had learned so far was only the beginning.